Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. For weeks, Sharon Rosales had been haunted by the uneasy presence of Mitch Bacall, the charming yet elusive man who had drifted into Genoa City under the guise of being a visiting consultant for Chancellor Winters. Everyone in town seemed to buy his story, except Sharon. Something about Mitch never added up. His eyes, his hesitation whenever someone mentioned Los Angeles, and the way he often appeared in places where he had no business being, it all gnawed at her intuition. Sharon had met liars before. She'd stared into the eyes of men who smiled while hiding something monstrous beneath their polite exteriors. Mitch was one of them. And what she would eventually uncover would shake Genoa City to its core. It started innocently enough. Sharon, still grieving Noah's tragic disappearance and burdened by the guilt of her misplaced blame toward his ex-girlfriend, was trying to find peace. She had reopened Crimson Light's private event room for a local support group, hoping to give herself and others an outlet for healing. Mitch volunteered to help. That was the first red flag. Why would a man she barely knew, who claimed to be swamped with corporate consulting work, suddenly take an interest in her small-town cafe projects? Still, Sharon allowed it, rationalizing that she shouldn't let paranoia dictate her judgment. Yet, each time he stepped behind the counter, his presence made her skin prickle. One afternoon, as Sharon organized old photos of Faith and Noah in a memory box, she noticed Mitch standing outside, watching her through the glass door. He wasn't smiling. His expression was distant, haunted, as if the images she held carried a secret he knew all too well. When she looked up and met his gaze, he quickly turned and walked away. That was the moment something shifted inside her. Sharon decided to stop second-guessing herself and start investigating. She began by asking questions, softly, subtly, in her classic, gentle way. At Society, she approached Devon and Lily, casually asking how long they'd known Mitch. Devon admitted he'd only been working with him for a month, impressed by his sharp strategies but unaware of his personal background. Lily, more observant, confessed that Mitch had refused to share anything about his family, saying only that his past was complicated. That phrase stuck with Sharon. Complicated often meant dangerous in her world. Back at Crimson Lights, Sharon went through the receipts from a charity event Mitch had helped organize. She noticed that he'd used a California billing address linked to a Bacall Industries, a company she'd never heard of. When she searched the name, nothing came up, at least, not under legitimate business records. That's when her instincts screamed louder. Mitch was not who he said he was. As she dug deeper, she reached out to an old contact in Los Angeles, an investigative journalist named Mariah Klein, someone who owed her a favor from her therapy outreach work. Sharon asked her to look into Mitch Bacall and anything related to him. Within 2 days, Mariah called back with a chilling revelation: there's no record of a Mitch Bacall existing before 2020. It's like the man appeared out of nowhere. But that wasn't the most alarming part. The journalist also found an old news clipping about a man named Michael Darnell, a known corporate spy and con artist who had vanished years ago after being linked to multiple identity fraud cases involving pharmaceutical and tech companies. The photo attached to the article made Sharon's heart stop. It was Mitch. The same warm smile, the same eyes. Mitch Bacall was really Michael Darnell, a man with a criminal past who specialized in infiltrating companies, stealing proprietary data, and vanishing before anyone realized what happened. Suddenly, everything clicked. His connections to Chancellor Winters, his access to Jabot executives through Phyllis, and his cozying up to both Victor and Sharon herself, it was all part of a larger con. But Sharon wasn't satisfied with just knowing. She needed proof. She needed to expose Mitch before he hurt anyone else, especially because she suspected that whatever he was after now had something to do with Noah. The thought made her blood run cold. She remembered a night weeks earlier when Mitch had asked oddly personal questions about Noah's time in London, about his photography business, and the mysterious investor who had helped him open his art gallery there. Sharon had dismissed it at the time as friendly curiosity. Now, she realized Mitch had been fishing for something deeply connected to her son. Determined, Sharon decided to confront Mitch, but she would do it her way, smartly and subtly. She invited him to a private meeting at Crimson Lights after hours, telling him she wanted to discuss an upcoming community project. Mitch showed up right on time, wearing that same confident smile that used to disarm her but now made her stomach churn. As they sat down, Sharon kept her tone warm but firm. "You've been quite a mystery since you came to Genoa City," she began. "And I think it's time you tell me who you really are." Mitch's eyes flickered, just briefly, but enough for Sharon to know she'd struck a nerve. He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Sharon, you sound like you've been reading too many spy novels." She didn't laugh. Instead, she slid a printed copy of the old Los Angeles Times article across the table. His smile froze. "Michael Darnell," she said quietly. "That's you, isn't it?" For a long, heavy moment, Mitch said nothing. The only sound was the faint hum of the espresso machine behind the counter. Then, he sighed and leaned forward, his facade cracking. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into," he said softly, almost pitying her. But Sharon didn't flinch. "You're right," she replied. "But I'm not going to let you hurt the people I care about. Not my son, not Devon, not anyone else." Mitch stood up abruptly, his voice rising. "You don't understand, Sharon. This isn't about money, it's about survival." His words came fast now, his calm demeanor unraveling. "They're watching me. They've been watching since Los Angeles. If I don't deliver what they want, I'm as good as dead." Sharon's heart raced, torn between fear and curiosity. "Who's they?" she demanded. Before he could answer, the front door swung open. Nick Newman stepped inside, clearly having followed his gut about Sharon's late-night meeting. "Everything okay here?" he asked, eyeing Mitch with suspicion. Mitch forced a smile, muttering something about a misunderstanding, but Sharon could feel the tension radiating off him. She gently told Nick to stay calm, but Mitch was already backing toward the door. "You shouldn't have done this," he said, voice trembling. "You've just made yourself a target." Then he bolted into the night. Nick urged Sharon to call Chance immediately, but she refused. "Not yet," she said. "I need to know who's pulling his strings." Against Nick's protests, she continued to investigate, retracing Mitch's steps over the past few weeks. What she found shocked even her: Mitch had been in contact with Victor Newman. Victor had apparently brought Mitch to town under the pretense of corporate consulting but had really hired him to dig into Chancellor Winter's internal data, part of Victor's ongoing mission to outmaneuver his rivals. But Victor had no idea about Mitch's double identity or his criminal past. When Sharon pieced that together, she realized the stakes were far higher than she imagined. Mitch wasn't just a con man anymore, he was a man running from dangerous people, and Genoa City was his latest hiding place. Still, Sharon couldn't ignore the human side of what she'd seen in Mitch's eyes, the fear, the regret, the desperation. A part of her, the empathic counselor who'd spent years helping lost souls, wanted to believe he could be redeemed. But that compassion warred with her loyalty to her loved ones. She decided to end this once and for all. She arranged one final meeting, this time with Chancellor present. When Mitch arrived, thinking Sharon was alone, he froze at the sight of the detective. "You set me up," he whispered. Sharon's expression softened. "No, Mitch. You set yourself up the moment you lied to everyone who trusted you." Chance took a step forward, badge visible. "Michael Darnell, you're under arrest for multiple counts of identity fraud, corporate espionage, and obstruction of justice." Mitch didn't resist. He simply looked at Sharon, eyes full of a pain she couldn't quite read. "You think you've saved them," he said cryptically. "But you don't understand what's coming. You just opened the wrong door." Those words haunted Sharon long after Mitch was taken away. Days later, Chance informed her that Mitch had vanished during a prisoner transfer, someone had broken him out. That chilling news confirmed Sharon's worst fear: Mitch hadn't been lying about being watched. Whoever was behind him, whoever they were, was still out there. And now, they knew Sharon Rosales had exposed their operative. In the aftermath, Genoa City was left shaken. Victor was furious when he learned Sharon had uncovered the truth before he did. He demanded to know why she hadn't come to him first, but Sharon refused to apologize. "You brought a criminal into this town, Victor," she told him. "And I wasn't about to let him destroy any more lives." Phyllis, meanwhile, was secretly intrigued, her tech instincts telling her that Mitch's disappearance had ties to something bigger, perhaps connected to the AI program she'd recently stolen from Kane Ashby. The threads were starting to weave together, forming a larger tapestry of deceit. Alone at Crimson Lights one night, Sharon replayed her conversation with Mitch in her mind. His last warning, "You just opened the wrong door," echoed in her thoughts. What door? What did he mean? Then she found it, a small flash drive he had slipped into her bag before his arrest. Trembling, she plugged it into her laptop. Files appeared, encrypted and labeled only with initials, NB, Project Resurrection. Her breath caught. NB, Noah Bacall? Could it be? Did Mitch know something about her son's mysterious disappearance after all? As the cafe lights flickered and thunder rumbled outside, Sharon realized this was far from over. Exposing Mitch hadn't ended the danger, it had only revealed the first layer of a much deeper conspiracy. Now, Sharon wasn't just a grieving mother or a coffee shop owner. She was the one person standing between a powerful hidden network and the truth they were desperate to bury. Mitch's true identity was just the beginning of a new nightmare, one that would drag Sharon, and everyone she loved, into a battle for truth, redemption, and survival in Genoa City's darkest shadows. The question wasn't whether Sharon could handle the truth. It was whether the truth could handle Sharon Rosales. Sharon Rosales could barely breathe as the glow from her laptop screen illuminated the darkened cafe. The flash drive Mitch had slipped into her bag sat in the USB port, pulsing faintly like it contained something alive. Project Resurrection. The name alone made her skin crawl. She clicked on the file folder again, only to be met with encrypted codes, strange sequences of numbers and letters she couldn't decipher. But one file stood out, titled simply Noah. Sharon's heart stopped. The cursor hovered over it as her hand trembled. For a long moment, she couldn't bring herself to open it. What if it confirmed her worst fears? What if it revealed that her son, Noah, hadn't just vanished, but had been taken? She took a deep breath and clicked. The file contained a series of surveillance photos, grainy, time-stamped from different locations around Europe, Prague, London, Venice. In every image, Noah appeared thinner, distant, often walking beside people Sharon didn't recognize. But one figure stood out. A woman with auburn hair, always in the background, watching him. Sharon's eyes narrowed. The metadata on the photo identified her only as SB, and suddenly it hit her. Sienna Bacall. The same Sienna who had arrived in Genoa City alongside Mitch, pretending to be his sister. Her pulse quickened. Mitch hadn't come to Genoa City by accident. He and Sienna had a connection to Noah, one that ran far deeper than she had realized. Maybe Mitch's warning wasn't a threat, it was a clue. You just opened the wrong door. Maybe he meant that by uncovering him, she had triggered something larger, something that involved her own family. The next morning, Sharon went straight to Chance Chancellor's office. She handed him the flash drive, her voice steady but filled with dread. You need to see this. It's about Mitch, and my son. Chance inserted the drive, and together they watched as the photos flickered across his monitor. These aren't just random sightings, Chance said gravely. Someone was tracking Noah. And not just casually, they were following him for months. He clicked through a few files and stopped at one labeled R Phase 1. Inside were coded diagrams, possible schematics, and encrypted notes that mentioned neural mapping, genetic synchronization, and subject activation. None of it made sense, except for one recurring reference, Project Resurrection. What the hell is this? Sharon whispered. Chance leaned back, brow furrowed. This looks like some kind of biotech experiment. If I had to guess, Mitch wasn't just stealing corporate data. He was collecting genetic profiles, maybe even targeting certain families. Families? Sharon repeated, her voice cracking. You think Noah was part of one of these experiments? Chance hesitated. I think Mitch was gathering data for someone powerful. Someone who needed a subject like Noah, young, intelligent, creative, and connected to influential families. This could go way beyond identity theft. Sharon's stomach twisted. Then we need to find Sienna. She's still in town, isn't she? She was, Chance said grimly. Until last night. She checked out of her hotel and vanished. That revelation sent Sharon spiraling. The pieces were starting to form a horrifying picture. Mitch and Sienna hadn't just been partners in crime, they had been part of a network using human lives as pawns in something sinister. But why Noah? Why her son? Determined to get answers, Sharon decided to visit Victor Newman. If anyone had the resources to track down someone like Sienna, it was him. When she arrived at Newman Enterprises, Victor was in his office, reading a report from one of his investigators. Sharon, he greeted, his tone cool. I heard about your encounter with Mitch Bacall. Quite the scandal. This isn't about a scandal, Sharon said firmly. It's about Noah. Victor's expression hardened. Go on. She handed him a copy of the photos from the flash drive. Mitch was using a false identity. His real name is Michael Darnell, and he was involved in something called Project Resurrection. There are photos of Noah, taken all over Europe. Someone was following him. Maybe using him. Victor studied the images in silence. Then, after a long pause, he stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city below. I know that name, he said finally. Project Resurrection. Sharon's eyes widened. You what? It was a covert biotech initiative, Victor explained slowly. Years ago, Newman Biotech partnered with a company called Luminera Labs. They were working on genetic restoration, trying to reverse cellular decay, essentially resurrecting damaged tissue. The project was scrapped after a data breach. But if Mitch was involved, then someone revived it, Sharon finished for him, horror creeping into her voice. And they used my son. Victor turned to her, his expression unreadable. If Noah got tangled in this, it's because he was too trusting. But Sharon, listen to me carefully. Whoever's behind this doesn't leave loose ends. If they know you've seen that data, you're in danger. I'm not backing down, she said fiercely. Not until I know the truth. Victor admired her courage but warned her to stay out of it. Sharon didn't listen. That night, she returned to Crimson Lights and went through every piece of correspondence Noah had sent before he disappeared, emails, postcards, even old voicemails. One message caught her attention. It was from 3 months before he went missing. Hey, Mom, Noah's voice said, warm but distracted. I met someone amazing. She says she can help me get my work noticed. Her name's Sienna. You'd like her, I think. Sharon froze. Sienna Bacall had been in Noah's life before Mitch came to Genoa City. They hadn't just met by coincidence, this had been planned from the start. The next day, Sharon met with Nick, filling him in on everything. Nick's protective instincts flared immediately. If Sienna was using Noah, we'll find her. I'll make sure of it. He called in Adam, who still had contacts in the underworld, and together the brothers formed an unlikely alliance. Within hours, Adam traced a recent financial transaction linked to Sienna's alias. She'd purchased a train ticket to Chicago. Against Chance's advice, Sharon insisted on going with Nick to confront her. When they arrived at the hotel where Sienna was hiding, Sharon could feel her pulse pounding. She pushed open the door to the suite and found Sienna sitting at a desk, surrounded by open files and a laptop. She didn't even look surprised to see them. I was wondering how long it would take you to find me, Sienna said calmly. Where's my son? Sharon demanded, her voice trembling. Sienna sighed, closing her laptop. Alive, she said simply. For now. Nick lunged forward, but Sharon held him back. What do you mean, for now? Sienna's eyes flicked toward the window, her tone chillingly detached. Noah was chosen for his creativity, his neural patterns. Project Resurrection wasn't just about healing, it was about replication. Mitch and I were tasked with identifying individuals with certain cognitive signatures. Noah was one of them. Replication? Sharon echoed, horrified. You're saying, cloning? Sienna smirked. Not exactly. Think digital resurrection, memory mapping, consciousness transfer. They were building something far more advanced. And Noah volunteered. He thought he was helping create technology to preserve art, emotion, creativity. But they used him. Sharon staggered back, her mind reeling. Noah wouldn't have agreed to that. He wouldn't have disappeared without telling me. He didn't know the truth until it was too late, Sienna said softly. When he realized what they were doing, he tried to run. Mitch was sent to retrieve him, but he couldn't do it. That's why we came to Genoa City. Mitch thought he could protect you before they came for you, too. Tears welled in Sharon's eyes. Who are they? Sienna hesitated, glancing at Nick. You'll find out soon enough. They're already here. At that moment, the sound of gunfire shattered the air. Bullets ripped through the suite windows as Nick pulled Sharon to the ground. Sienna dove behind the desk, shouting, "They found me." Nick grabbed his phone to call Chance, but the signal was jammed. Within seconds, masked men burst into the room. Sharon recognized one of them instantly. It was one of Victor's former security contractors. "Get her," he barked, pointing at Sharon. Nick fought back fiercely, but there were too many of them. Just as one of the men lunged toward Sharon, a sudden explosion rocked the hallway. Smoke filled the suite, and when it cleared, Sienna was gone, along with the flash drive and her laptop. By the time Chance and the police arrived, there was nothing left but chaos. Sharon was shaken, Nick injured, and the files that could have revealed Noah's whereabouts were gone. Days later, Sharon sat alone in her living room, staring at a single piece of paper that had been slipped under her door overnight. It was handwritten, signed simply, MD. The note read, "He's alive. Don't trust Victor. Don't trust anyone. Project Resurrection isn't over." Her hands trembled as she read it over and over. Mitch was alive, and somewhere out there, so was Noah.